Welcome to Smart Talk, where we speak with leading academics and other thoughtful persons on the important challenges facing the world today. My name is Marty Rowland. I am a trustee and longtime member of the faculty at the Henry George School of Social Science. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Marc Morial. Marc is the CEO and president of the National Urban League, a 90 affiliate organization whose mission is providing direct services that impact and improve the lives of more than 2 million people nationwide, serving 300 communities in 37 states, including the District of Columbia. Welcome to Smart Talk, Marc. Your office is based in Manhattan, Lower Manhattan, I suppose. But we're going to be talking about that change a little bit because it figures into some of the questions I have. But I guess for the audience, I wanted to give a little background on how it is that Marc and I are speaking today in this program. And it kind of goes back to the early 90s in New Orleans, where we met at the Jack Gillespie Environmental Breakfast. I think that's the event that we met. And you might recall the people back then, like Tracy Washington and Malcolm Suber, Jay Arena, Mike Howells, Daryl Malik Wiley, Brad Ott. You might remember Gary Gresh, who was always doing the energy and anti-war stuff. And then Kit Center, who passed away 9 years ago. But it was a good group, lively. We had a lot of discussion. Just a little introduction. Did want to say that you became mayor in 1994 in the footsteps of your father, who went by Dutch. First name's Ernest. But in my first question, I wanted to say that you left office in 2004, which was just before the Katrina disaster, to hold your current position at the National Urban League. I thought that maybe we would have you start off talking about your what happened exactly when you left office in New Orleans as mayor and got into your current position.
Hey, thank you, Marty. And I want to thank you for your friendship. And yes, I remember all of the names you mentioned, who all were social justice and environmental justice warriors before the terminology became popular. Toiling in the vineyards of the 80s and 90s in Louisiana. And in those days, I had a chance to serve on the state Senate's brand new Environmental Quality Committee, which was a brand new committee set up in 1991. I served as the vice chair of that committee, and it gave me a platform on many of these issues. Marty, I had an incredible run as mayor of New Orleans. It was a fulfilling, rewarding, enjoyable, impactful 8 years to change and transform a city that I deeply care about. I love, it's the city of my birth. It's the city of my family's heritage for more than 200 plus years, and had a chance to leave office with high approval ratings. But more importantly, when I left office, the people felt that New Orleans was moving in the right direction. And they really hadn't felt that, according to the University of New Orleans Quality of Life polls, in many, many years. That poll began to show a positive outlook about a year after I took office, and we began some of the transformative changes. And it remained positive until about 18 months after I left office. It switched to people having a negative outlook on the future of the city. And, the rest was history. It's been a tough road. When I left, actually, in 2002, I spent a year practicing law before I came to the National Urban League. And coming to the National Urban League is not something you seek, as many of the veteran civil rights soldiers told me. They said, the Urban League presidency seeks you. You don't seek it, it finds you. And in many respects, the Urban League did find me. And I began an effort 20 years ago this year to really transform the National Urban League. And my job as mayor of New Orleans was to transform a great city, make it more progressive, more inclusive, and also tackle hard problems like violence and poverty and housing. National Urban League, in many respects, was a proud organization. It had an incredible history, but it was sort of at a junction point, right? In the early 20th, 21st century. And I felt we needed to build it into a multi-generational organization, that we needed to dig much deeper into activism and public policy. We need to completely retool all of our programs. We need to build new alliances and coalitions. And that's what the last 8 years have indeed been about. And we've had tremendous growth. We're 5 times as large today as we were when I started. We serve 8 times as many people. Our affiliate network is now led by a dynamic group of new generation, next generation leaders, including many more women than ever before. We created an auxiliary of young professionals, and we've dived hard into issues like justice system reform, democracy and voting, the battle against extremism and hate in America, while maintaining our core work in economic empowerment, education, and after-school work. We will never let up on those, but we had to focus more definitively on the social justice issues.
That's good. Yeah, I did want to come back to your involvement in the National Urban League, but I thought maybe I'd ask you to characterize how you fit within the, I guess I'd call it the panoply of social justice activist groups. For example, we all know about the NAACP, National Action Network, the CLC. So how, I guess I see from listening to your presentations and what you do is that you've got a keen focus on entrepreneurship. Would you describe that as a key difference in how you're different from?
I think probably writ large, all of the civil rights and social justice groups pursue the same mission. I think we have different lanes and different focuses. So one of the areas we focus on is economic empowerment. That's everything from jobs, housing, and yes, entrepreneurship. And we started focusing on entrepreneurship because it's a way you build wealth, it's a way you create jobs, it's a way you create economic independence. And there are many people in the community who no longer want to work for someone else. They want to work for themselves, or they want to build an institution so that they can hire others. And so we started focusing on that. We now serve 13,000 entrepreneurs across the nation. And I think the important way to look at all of us in the civil rights and social justice space is we're trying to stay focused on the same wide multi-lane highway, and we run in different lanes, yet we're pursuing the same direction. And that's one of the things I like to emphasize is, we may have differences here and differences there on policy issues, but there's no air between us when it comes to mission and focus and on the overriding issues. But the National Urban League has always been unique because of our direct services platform. You can walk in an Urban League office, find a paid professional staffer, and they will help you find a job. They'll help you enroll in a government benefits program. They'll help you see if you can secure connectivity with the Affordable Care Act. We will help you if you want to become a homeowner. You want to become a business owner. You need a safe, wholesome place for your kids after school. In some places we do childhood. In some places we do Head Start. So we are so unique in the direct services work that we do in urban America with a focus on the Black community. And no one competes with that work. No one has anything near the platform we have in that space.
Yeah, well, that's good. I did want to say that I thought about having this interview after seeing you. Actually, I watched it twice. I might have watched it live, but I can't remember. It's the Senate Banking Committee in the past Congress, and Senator Twomey from Pennsylvania, and you handled it so well. Wanted to compliment you on that. But you were focusing on redlining and the problem of getting mortgages, for African Americans and other people of color. And I guess after listening, I was saying after 60 years of rights wins and laws and such, that we're still in this place where neighborhoods are still redlined and where people, even with some wealth, can't get mortgages. Did you want to
Marty,
comment more about,
it
explain,
troubles
maybe
me,
go
it
into a little bit more detail?
troubles me greatly that here we are in 2023, and the problem of redlining persists. Here we are in 2023, and the mortgage denial rates for Blacks and Latinos is higher than it is for white. Here we are in 2023, and Black Americans, and Latino Americans, and many white Americans have a hard time paying for housing because of the affordability crisis that we face. And so it's troubling, but we need a stronger anti-redlining law. We need a stronger Community Reinvestment Act, not a watered down one, not a weak one, not one that's punitive, but one that is constructive and encourages investments and investments in home ownership in urban communities, in Black communities. And I might add, Black communities today are not only urban, they're suburban. Look at suburban Philadelphia. Look at Jefferson Parish, Louisiana. Look at the suburbs in New York City. So our horizon and thought processes also have to expand.
Yeah. Yeah, the one of the foundations of the Henry George School of Social Science is that we have a strong focus on affordable housing, and it may not be clear if you're reading some of the materials, but our focus is on having a land value taxation system where we kind of promote eliminating all other taxes on, say, labor, taxes on capital, but we have a singular focus on taxing land value. And by doing that, you take a lot of the let's call it the rent from the rentiers who do nothing to earn their wealth. And by taxing land, it's very clear throughout the history, in particular in New York City, when you took the taxes off of land, you had a boom, and prices of land goes down, and people make it's more affordable. And when you talk about community land trusts, that's another aspect of that whole thing. And I was wondering, since I know that your development in the Harlem area for your new headquarters is going to include affordable housing, I thought maybe you could describe how you
Yeah,
went
thank you,
about
Marty. And
doing that.
we set out when we built our mixed use, our new headquarters building. We said we will not do a project that gentrifies. And it took us time to get the right partners in place, to get the right configuration in place, but the support of the state of New York, the support of the city of New York was instrumental. But what we're doing is we're showing people you can build a first-class building in Manhattan and have significant, in our case, every unit is affordable housing. 177 units, in fact, on 126th Street, with the office space being on 125th Street. And that is going to be where our new headquarters is located. So the idea of ensuring that there's sufficient affordable housing is that there should be an ironclad requirement that every new housing development in New York, if it's going to be on city-owned land, have a city permit, be involved in or include anything that people who are low and moderate income need. It needs to have affordable units. And we achieved that. And I'm proud of that, Marty, because I want to raise it up to everyone. Come look and see. You can, and we have affordable housing. We have first-class retail. We have the National Urban League's headquarters. We have the Urban Civil Rights Museum, first civil rights museum ever in New York City, coming to that site at 117 West 125th Street in about 2 years.
Yeah, well, that's good. So I know that there's going to be people tuning into this interview. It's going to be on YouTube and other places. And I'm going to hear comments that I thought you were going to talk about economics, Marty, and I'll have to say that 100 years ago, when people talked the way that we're doing, we'd call it political economy. People didn't use that word economy, and I think it's really important to point out that political economy, it was common to, who's in charge, who owns what, and where does wealth usually end up? And, that's pure economics. So I was wondering, do you have a view on how the word economics and how what you're describing fits together?
This is a thing about economics. And to me, economics drives the distribution of natural resources and human-made resources, the goal being to enhance and improve our quality of life and our enjoyment. That's what economics is to me. It's that science, it's the process, and we have had systems in this country of economics that was exploitative. The original system, where so much of the wealth of this country was built on free labor. The enslaved system, and then for many white Americans, an indentured system. And look, we have to acknowledge that wealth was created, the tobacco wealth, the sugar wealth, the cotton wealth, all the agricultural wealth that was created. In the 1800s, sugar and cotton were the most valuable commodities in the world. Cotton was a luxury item. Sugar was a luxury item in terms of people wanting to sweeten all sorts of foods. So we have to acknowledge that when we talk about economics. And to talk about economics without understanding that is to talk about economics in a superficial way. I studied economics at the University of Pennsylvania. I had a great education in economics. I had teachers that wanted me to pursue a PhD in economics. I chose to pursue a law degree instead. But learning what I learned and learning how I learned gave me the tools, particularly as a public official, to be able to analyze and see through sometimes what I call stories about the economy, which were not necessarily true.
Mm-hmm. That's good. So there's one phrase that I don't use, and many people within the Henry George School understand why, and that's the word or the phrase human capital. And the problem with that is that capital essentially is inert. It's people, labor essentially, who act on capital, on land, or with resources that make things work. So to single out the word human within human capital is to kind of miss the meaning of the joining of capital, labor, and land. And I have a friend, Cecilia Mowat, who's a consultant African American woman in Chicago, who really gets up in arms when people use the word human capital because it brings back ideas of slavery. But
That's interesting. Yeah, I've not
yeah,
heard that. These terms, people sometimes use human capital because it sounds more sophisticated, but you are talking about labor. You're talking about people's talent and abilities deployed. So I can understand the concern. Can I get some water? Yeah. The concern about the utilization of the term, but I think the important thing is we're at a point now where we have to develop human capabilities. The world of technology is changing what we all need to know and be able to do to be able to function. I was filling out a visa application. It has to be done completely online. It's through a sophisticated portal. It's like, okay, I can't even take it, print it out, and take it with me someplace, which means I can't do it in the middle of a meeting somewhere. It's a little bit inconvenient. But today's person has to be far more skilled in many ways, not just in the utilization of computers, but in communication skill, in collaboration skill. This is the essence of the knowledge economy. And we redline not only in housing, but we redline in the development of human capabilities.
Yeah.
And how does that manifest itself? Unequal school systems, unequal access to community colleges and graduate school. All of this manifests itself in that way.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just wanted to bring that up because it's kind of deceptive when somebody uses the word human capital, because it's like the people that are like running corporations, or maybe they have people that they control. They can talk about human capital, but it's kind of like getting away from the idea that it's actually labor, and it's important that we spend the resources to develop that labor rather than focusing it otherwise. So I drive my wife crazy by what I do. I'm going to describe in a second, and that's watching TV programs uh, that people of that oftentimes don't even agree with. And the reason I do that is that I want to hear their points of view, the arguments that they're making, so I can be better informed, or come back with maybe a more cogent argument in opposition to what they're talking about. One of the phrases that I hear is kind of like a code word for African American run cities, and that's large democratic cities. And they're always talking about um, uh, uh, well, inefficiencies and waste, and DAs are soft on crime and that kind of thing. Do you want to talk about those kind of like dog
It's
whistles?
all it is old-fashioned racist stereotyping. That's all it is. And it's not unlike the same rhetoric used in the 1960s and the 1970s and in the 1980s. Cities have and are home and have always been home to all kinds of people. They've also been the home of the greatest American successes and the greatest American challenges. Cities are a place where Black, white, Latino, Asian, rich, and poor live to some extent side by side or within a city. I chafe at those pejorative because look, I could run around and talk about how rural areas are opioid infused, right? I could run around and talk about how rural areas are heavily dependent on farm subsidies and subsidies from the Department of Agriculture. If all I wanted to do was play wedge politics.
Yeah.
People who do that are usually lacking in courage. They are seeking to distract people's minds away. Do cities have challenges? Yes, but small towns do too. Right? Do cities have economic challenges and challenges with violence? Well, there's 50,000 people who die of gun deaths each year, and almost half of them die of self-inflicted wounds. So, exploiting problems and challenges is simply something that is, to me, needs to be called out.
Yeah. Appreciate that.
And these cities, look, where would America be without its cities?
Yeah.
Where would
Yeah.
America be without Boston and New York and Philadelphia and Cleveland and Chicago and Cincinnati, New Orleans, Atlanta, Houston, Dallas, Minneapolis, or Fort Worth?
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
cities thrive because the city today is also its metropolitan region.
Yeah.
And those suburbs are dependent on these cities.
Yeah. One of the things that Henry George School would say is that that's where the wealth is being created and the value of land going up. And what the problem is in society is that we're not capturing that rise in wealth from the land value. And
We're not.
for
We're not. And
for example, the high rises where people don't pay taxes and don't even live in those buildings. I mean, it's taking away from the rest of us by allowing those kind of things to happen.
yeah, look, we have we're at another economic inflection point in America. Because on one hand, we've got low unemployment. On the other hand, we've got rising, if you will, a rising gulf between have and have-nots. We have a phenomenon in this country that many working people are poor people. They have a job, but they're still poor.
Yeah.
They're still having a tough time making ends meet.
Yeah. Yeah, I did want to bring up things. I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but I often see meetings with congressmen or others, and somebody will stand up and start shouting about something that's relevant in the news, and they didn't do it. I think recently Congressman Tlaib was giving a talk, and somebody accused her of not doing more against the Ukrainian war. Uh, I welcome those kind of outbursts, but to an extent, it's got to go to a point where somebody says, okay, well, you got an interesting point of view. Let's agree to meet about that and get to the nuts of whatever the conflict is. But do you
Marty, you
have,
have people today, they practice what I call angertainment. They are angry to entertain. They are political show boats and show horses, not political work boats and work horses.
yeah,
And it's just a period of time, that we live in today, where you have many elected officials who, attacking others. Look at their legislative record. Many of them have never passed one bill or one meaningful bill.
yeah, yeah. So, so I saw you on Meet the Press. It was Chuck Todd, and the little clip that I saw, he was peppering you about police violence, and you came back and said that there's often ways of doing policing that don't involve people with guns, for example, social workers and such. Could you give us a little?
Marty, I'm of the point of view that, and I think Americans need to, we have to try some different things. Whatever we've been doing has not worked. So the idea that the only way we respond to violence is by hiring more police officers and arresting more people as though that's the solution. The evidence points to that as a failed approach. The evidence also says that historically, the largest percentage of people who are arrested for possession of marijuana or small amounts of personal drugs. That is the truth. That is the God's truth. And so we have to ensure or be willing to try new things. So Newark uses nonviolent intervention strategies. And I don't get caught in a trap of police yes or police no. I get caught in a conversation. I like a conversation about effective public safety strategies. So that includes policing, but it also includes other types of strategies. If you will, unarmed dispute resolution teams are a strategy that many are trying. A response system which allows social workers and psychologists to go out on some instances is also a strategy.
Yeah.
So,
Well, yeah. I appreciate the viewpoint, and something connected with that. I think it's ignorance of I think most people in society who don't realize that there's a design within jurisprudence, the design where you err on the side of letting people who may be guilty, you let them go. You don't chase after them 100 miles an hour, and that's an intentional design where you don't want to ever put somebody who's innocent in jail. So so you look at the whole system of trials and rules of evidence and laws. So with a good defense lawyer, I think most people can get out of something, whatever it is. But I was wondering if you could give us your point of view on my idea that jurisprudence is designed to let people who may be guilty, maybe they'll get away, and then they've learned something.
well, the old American adage, I mean, we have built into our system the presumption of innocence. We have built into our system the right against self-incrimination. Those are bedrock American principles. How much we adhere to them now, I'm not so sure. But the system was designed by a group of people who were skeptical of the power of the king, skeptical of the power of the king to just arrest people for specious purposes, really with political motivations.
Yeah.
And so the United States Constitution, the United States Bill of Rights was designed with multiple features: the right to privacy, the right to due process, the right to trial by jury, the protection against cruel and unusual punishment. I mean, the Bill of Rights is loaded with constitutional protections related to the quote justice system.
Yeah.
How much we adhere to that, I don't know. I mean, how much people actually believe it's the case, but it's America.
Yeah.
That's fundamental to who we are. So I say this is why many of us fight. This is why many of us work. We want those rights to not just exist on a piece of paper that's 200 plus years old. We want it to be real in the DNA and the body politic of the justice system.
Yeah, that's good. I wanted to go back to some words and speeches that Martin Luther King had. And I know during the Vietnam War, he came out strong within a year of his assassination. But now that we're into this looking like a forever war in Ukraine, do you have any opinions that might parallel what Martin Luther King was talking about in the problems of war while we got so many struggles here at home?
This is a militaristic, we live in a militaristic environment. I do think, though, that President Biden, by not sending troops to Ukraine, is modulating. And I'm always torn about this because I would prefer peaceful resolutions to a conflict. But I also know that Vladimir Putin practices authoritarianism. Vladimir Putin was an enabler of Donald Trump and an ally of Donald Trump. Vladimir Putin interfered in suppressing the African American vote in the 2016 election. And he's now invaded Ukraine for no reason except he thought he could do it and win. Having said that, I do feel that oftentimes we rely on military power too quickly and too often to resolve disputes. And it distresses me, for example, that a great institution, a great creation of the 20th century, the United Nations, which is right here in this town, right up the street here, doesn't seem to have the moral influence it used to have.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a little strange that billions of dollars going overseas for weapons and bullets, because obviously all wars will stop when at least one side runs out of bullets. And
And Marty, look, the Vietnam War was a grave mistake. Its escalation was a mistake. It cost the nation. The war in Iraq was a grave mistake. We should never have gone to Iraq. It was a war of choice. It was a war of intervention. We know that now, but what lessons have we learned?
yeah. One of the last questions I had, and maybe you can think of something if you wanted to add, but I wanted you to comment on whether Mayor Landrieu of New Orleans was the perfect person to take down the Confederate statues. It was very bold at the time that he did it. There's still some statues that maybe should come down. For example, the guy who founded the KKK, Albert Pike, I think his statue is still standing on Jefferson Davis Avenue, which in itself is a good question of why there's still a Jefferson Davis Avenue in New
So,
Orleans.
yeah, I
Maybe they
know,
changed
but
it.
they changed it. It's now Norman Francis Parkway.
Oh, okay,
So
great.
now Jefferson Davis Parkway is now named after the great president of Xavier University, Norman
That's
C.
great. Yeah.
I'll
So
say
what
this.
do you think about Mayor Landrieu and what
Well,
he
I
did?
thought Mayor Landrieu showed courage and met the moment. Remember, at the point he took down the statues, it's at the same time that the Confederate flag came down in South Carolina, the same time that the Emanuel Nine were murdered in their own church, Mother Emanuel Church in Charleston at the AME Church there. And it took, I think it took courage. He had people who pushed back on him, but he stuck to his guns. And those statues, first of all, they should have never been put up. Secondly, they should have been down a long time ago. And I think he did the right thing at the right time. What I hope is that the city will take those sites and turn those sites into a celebration of New Orleans' multicultural present and future. That they'll take those sites and put art pieces or statues or expressions there that represent the current and the future of New Orleans.
Mhm. Yeah, and maybe see if there's additional statues that need to come down, but I'm
More
certain
need to
that
come down. I think all of these, Confederates, Confederate generals, Confederate sympathizers, these statues should never have been put up. I mean, I always told people, I said, who puts up statues to people who lose a war? I said,
yeah,
all these statues were an effort to try to justify the South's actions during the Civil War.
yeah. I grew up in a town where it was General Custer's wife was from. So in 1910, they put up a statue of George Custer, and he lost. So we got a statue there. So I've got an interesting political background of people that we're supposed to look up to. So I thought maybe we'd allow you to maybe wrap up the
Yeah,
interview with
Marty,
things that.
I want to just point out to all your viewers to be on the lookout on April 18th for the release of the State of Black America report. It's going to focus on hate and extremism this year. We're going to look at how the philosophy of hate and white supremacy drive public policy. We see it driving the attack on Black history. We see it driving the attack on progressive climate policies. We see it driving the attack on American democracy and voting. So the philosophy of hate and extremism is abhorrent. Those that practice it want to change and alter the public policy landscape. And we have to understand. So this year's State of Black America report is going to dig deep on that issue.
That's good. So anything that we didn't cover, you want to?
I think we covered a lot today.
Yeah.
I just always like to lift up the North Star, Mark. And this was a North Star when I led New Orleans. I think the North Star is to build an America which is multicultural, multiracial, multi-orientation, multi-religious, multi-faith, an America which is bound together by an adherence to certain values, the notion of true freedom, the notion of justice, the notion of equity and equality, the notion of respect and tolerance for those that may not be like me. And that is the America we have to build in the 21st century. America's always been an experiment. The founding fathers said great things, wrote great things, made grave mistakes. But it's been our job, as it was the job of many, whether it was Lincoln and Douglas, whether it was Du Bois and Booker T. Washington, whether it was Johnson and Kennedy and Martin Luther King and Fannie Lou Hamer and many others in the 1960s, and Thurgood Marshall and Earl Warren, to if you will, embrace our role as constitutional perfecters. Our job is to perfect a vision whose execution was flawed, and respect the vision, but not be held hostage by it, and not believe that because we are not strong enough as a nation to say that the founding fathers were great, but they made mistakes. And to, in fact, do so is to be a true patriotic American.
Yeah, that's great. Appreciate the closing words there. So this
Marty,
was
thanks for your friendship and your great insight into this conversation. It was great seeing you recently. Look forward to seeing you again.
Yeah.
Be in touch.
Okay, we will. So,
thanks so much.
Okay, we'll see you. That's it for this edition. For more information, please join us at hgsss.org. I'm Marty Rowland, and thank you for watching Smart Talk.